the USF Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice, 2016-17 academic calendar. Well, tonight we will have the opportunity to experience an extraordinary performance by Corrina Gould and Ariel Luckey. Founded in 2008, the USF Jewish Studies and Social Justice program is the first and only program in the history of the United States formally linking Jewish studies with social justice. In addition to offering numerous courses related to this interdisciplinary field, our program offers a minor in Jewish Studies and Social Justice, as well as a number of events, including a number of annual events such as a speaker series, a human rights lecture, a social justice lecture, and a social justice Passover Seder. This fall, in addition to tonight's exciting event, we have 3 other JSSJ events planned. This upcoming Tuesday, September 27th at 6:30 in the same room, human rights activist and the executive director of the Northern California Innocence Project, Hadar Harris, will deliver the 2nd annual Human Rights Lecture on criminal justice, human rights, and change in the United States. An international human rights attorney, using a comparative lens, Harris's talk, titled From Ferguson to Flint, Tamir to Trayvon, will place today's seemingly intractable crisis related to American political and racial injustice in a broader historical context, using the continuum of changing discourses, movement building, technological innovation, and shifting state behavior to uncover a place from which we can act collectively and individually to move society toward its potential. Thereafter, on October 13th and November 29th, we will premiere 2 book launches for books written by members of the JSSJ faculty. On October 13th, we'll have an on-campus book launch for Judaism's A 21st Century Introduction to Jews and Jewish Identities, written by Aaron Hahn Tapper, and that's me. And on November 29th, we'll have an on-campus book launch for Torah Told Different, Stories for a Pan-Poly Post-Denominational World, written by Andrew Raymer, famous man over there. Flyers regarding these amazing fall events can be found near the entrance to this room. In addition, if you're interested in being put on our JSSJ listserv, please add your name to the sign-up sheet, also found over there. Special thanks for support for tonight's performance goes to the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. Now, to begin tonight's program officially, many of the most pressing issues of the 21st century are those human beings have been grappling with since the dawn of time. Ideas such as right and wrong, justice and injustice, and responsibility. From Adam and Eve to the renowned 20th century activists Bella Abzug, Emma Goldman, and Lillian Wald. These issues continue to play a central role in many of our lives today, whether in San Francisco, Damascus, Flint, Ferguson, New York City, or Jerusalem. For Lillian Wald, though little known today, one of the most important Jewish activists of the last century, social justice is about balancing the tension between one's individual identity and one's communal identity. Tonight's speakers and performers epitomize this tension. 2 individuals who live and identify with particular social identities, as well as members of the larger human collective. 2 individuals who have insight into the ever-changing notion of social identities far beyond most of our own understanding. It's my pleasure to introduce to you tonight Corrina Gould and Ariel Luckey. Corrina is a Chochenyo and Karkin Ohlone woman born and raised in Oakland, California. The mother of 3 children, she currently works as the Title VII coordinator for the American Indian Child Resource Center, directing a range of after-school programs supporting Native peoples. Corrina is also the co-founder and a lead organizer for Indian People Organizing for Change, a small Native-run organization that works on indigenous peoples' issues, as well as sponsoring an annual Shell Mound Peace Walk to bring about education and awareness of the desecration of the sacred sites in the greater Bay Area. IPOC has led many actions, including the 2011 occupation of Sogorea in Vallejo, California, which was successful in preserving the sacred site. Corrina also sits on the California Indigenous Environmental Association Board, the Board of Directors for the Oakland Street Academy Foundation, and is the treasurer for the Eves HOA. She's also an avid Raiders fan. Ariel Luckey is a nationally acclaimed poet, actor, and playwright whose performances dance in the crossroads of education, art, and activism. Born and raised in Oakland, California, and the father of 2 children, Ariel was named a visionary by the Utne Reader for the innovation and quality of his first play, Freeland, which previously toured across the country at over 50 theaters and universities. He's been a featured artist at the Berkeley Repertory Theater, the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education, and on and on. He's received a number of awards, including the Wallace Alexander Gabot Foundation, the William and Flora Hewitt Packard Foundation, Playwright Commissioning Award, etc. They're both very accomplished. Please join me in welcoming Corrina and Ariel.
My name is Ariel Luckey, and I'm from Oakland, California. I grew up in the house I was born in, raised in the middle of a city colored by accumulated culture clash. In urban borderlands and Ohlone territory. The last stop on the Transcontinental Railroad, the birthplace of the Black Panthers. Home of the Hy-Vee movement and Occupy Oakland. A city of immigrants, where people speak 150 different languages, call home to every corner of the globe, a patchwork city of hustlers, artists, everyday people repping the town and rooting for the underdog. A land of oak, logos, but not enough trees, new luxury condos, but not enough beds for the homeless. This is conflicted geography. I am a product of the public and the private schools. The Coliseum flea market and the foodie cafes, the blood-soaked streets, and the creeks of Redwood Park. I grew up in between the mansions of Piedmont and the projects, building bridges between cultures and trying to find my way. I've traveled the world without crossing city lines. Been to West African high life, Thai Buddhist temple, Filipino barbecue, dance hall, dog bar, b-boy battles, Dia de los Muertos. Ethiopian weddings, pagan earthday rituals, Chinatown parades, jazz clubs, Baptist churches, Cupid bebes, Capoeira, Otis yoga ass, and the Zaki Montinios, Ramadan breakfast, now street freestyle cyphers, and indigenous sunrise ceremonies. But it's all gone down right here, in this place, on Ohlone land. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome everybody. How are y'all feeling? Good. Yeah? That's alright. We're just getting started. This is going to be a conversation, back and forth. So the more you give to me, the more I'll give to you. Is that a deal? Yeah? This can be participatory, right? We're going to do this together. So let's try it again. Welcome everybody, how you doing? Hey! Now we're getting started. I'm going to pass the mic to Corrina. Yeah.
What shape is this on?
Hello? There we go.
Porche Tuhi Ka'atla Shanka Ka'atra Corrina. What I said was good day in Chochenyo, the language of my ancestors. My great-grandfather was Jose Guzman, one of the last speakers of our language. And I'm actually from the East Bay. I'm not from this area. And so I always want to pause and think about where we come from. My ancestors come from the East Bay, and we generally live in the village of Huchin. And when we think of Huchin, we think of little small places when we think about villages, right? But Huchin actually encompasses almost all of Oakland, all of Berkeley, all the way up to almost Richmond. So that's a very huge area, right? My ancestors come from a place called Yergin, which is where I actually live right now, at the very corner of Oakland and San Leandro area, and it actually takes up San Lorenzo, Castro Valley, and Hayward. So who all is here from the Bay Area? All right, Bay Area folks, right? So we have to always know where we come from. This is actually the place of Yulamu. Can you guys say Yulamu? Yulamu is where the Ramaytush people come from. And this is an Ohlone place here as well. So actually when folks came here and they colonized us, it was the Spanish first that came. And they colonized us in a way that they threw us all together under one name, right? We were all called Costanoans. And Costanoans was people from the coast, right? But that's not who we all are. We have 8 different languages. We have 8 different creation stories. We have 8 different places that we are tied to and have original instructions for. So I'm always blessed to wake up in my homeland. This beautiful picture was taken when we were participating in an Earth Day that was happened a couple of years ago. And it says, this is Ohlone land, we must be the voices of our Chochenyo. And our Chochenyo is our grandchildren. And I'm blessed right now to have 3 grandchildren that are growing up. These are 2 little guys right here. And I have 1 new one who's about 8 months old. And this is the work that I do is to remind people that Ohlone people still exist on our own land. I'm blessed every single day to be able to do this work. I've been doing the work in the Bay Area around protection and preservation of the sacred sites of my ancestors for about 20 years. My friend Janella LaRose and I started an organization called Indian People Organizing for Change. Around the time that in the Bay Area there was 2 bases that were closing down, the Oakland Army base and the Naval Station in Alameda. And while we were doing the organizing there were some particular things that started to happen. We were doing door-to-door knocking on Native people's houses, asking them what kind of things were needed in the area that wasn't being taken care of, and what they would like to see on those base closures. But as we started doing that work, we started to get some interesting phone calls from folks. My friend Janella LaRose became a union carpenter representative and started working, doing that work, and began to get phone calls from folks that was doing union work. And what she was getting phone calls about was her co-workers were finding my relatives, my ancestors coming up out of the ground as they were doing development all over the Bay Area. One of the biggest ones that happened was a place called Emeryville, now called, that has a Bay Street Mall on top of it. There's some maps. That's good. Yeah. Well, before I get to that one, I guess. The Bay Street Mall was one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area, but there was 425 of them that actually ringed the entire bay, right? So imagine that these monuments of my ancestors, at one time, ringed the entire Bay Area. This is a map that was put together in 1909 by a man named Nels Nelson that worked at UC Berkeley. In 1909, he had this premonition that there was going to be so much development in the Bay Area that all of these shell mounds were going to be destroyed, right? Over 100 years ago, he figured out this was what was going to happen. So these shell mounds that dot all along the Bay Area actually have my ancestors inside of it. It's always a place where fresh water meets salt water, right? It's a place where we had ceremony, a place where people had villages, or a place where we always were. It was a place where our creation stories told us to be. It was places where our homes were, right? So of all of these 425 plus shell mounds, virtually none of them exist anymore. In 2005, my friend Janella LaRose and I came to an idea, actually it was her idea, let's do a walk. We had been totally almost annihilated in terms of history, in terms of the Bay Area. As Ohlone people, nobody knew about us, right? How do we bring around that recognition? Because we're not a federally recognized tribe, right? No Ohlone people are federally recognized. That means we don't have the same sovereign rights as other federally recognized tribes. But how do we bring that recognition back to the Bay Area that our people are still here? Because we're taught when we go to school in California in 3rd and 4th grade that all the California Indians are dead. So we are in history told that we don't exist. Even when my children were going to school in Oakland Public Schools, they were told they didn't exist. So it was our opportunity to begin to talk to people about how we still existed. So we actually started a walk. And we walked from Vallejo, which is way up on top, and we walked the entire way down to San Jose, and we walked the entire way back. In 2005, we were joined by people from all over the world. We were joined by people from the Nova Scotia, from the Cape Verde Islands, from Japan, from Australia, and people from all over the country. And we walked 18 miles a day, stopping at shell mounds along the way, honoring the ancestors that still lay there under railroad tracks and bars and schools and streets and apartment buildings. And we did this for 4 years. It took us 3 weeks to walk 300 miles, stopping and remembering that the ancestors are still there. Remembering that every single time that there's pavement that's pulled up, that there's digging that's going on, that there's a possibility that my ancestors might be coming up with it. So it's important for me as a mom, but now even more important as a grandmother, that we remember that this work has to be done. That our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren have to know that they have an existence here, that there's a connection still to this land. And it's important for people that live on this land now to realize that we still exist and that our history is important and why we're here. So if you can go back to that other one. Oh, all these pictures. This is Yelamu. So Yelamu is San Francisco. It's made up of all of these different village sites. There's Petlanuk and Sitlanak, Chukchi, Amnatak, Temagtak, Amonpuro, all of these places, Uriburi and Kuristag. These were the names of the village sites before anybody else got here. These are the names that people should remember while we're here. Why are these things erased? And for us, it's very, very important for us to realize that these things, these names, these languages, these people have been erased. Our ancestors have been erased because if we are known to be existing still, the United States government would have to deal with us. And we would have a lot more people, allies and accomplices that would want us to be realized here in this world now. So when I come to a place and I talk to students or I talk to young people or I talk to any audience, I always want them to remember, when you come to a space or place, when you go and visit another area, where you grew up at, think back to that. Who were the very first people that lived in that land? What was their names? What is the village site that you actually come from? What is that language that was spoken? It's important for us to know the space and place that we're on. Everyone is in occupied territory if you live in some place called, what is now called the United States of America. This land has always been here to take care of us. As Indigenous people, we have a responsibility to our original teachings of how we are supposed to steward this land and how we are supposed to be here. As an Ohlone woman growing up now, covered by entire cities and urbanization, it's my job not only to teach my children and my grandchildren and other young people, but it's also my job to give that information to those that choose to make this their home as well. So for me, it's important for you guys to know where you're from. That if you live here in San Francisco, that you live in Yelamu. That if you live in the East Bay, that you live in Huchin. And if you live in someone else's territory, that it's your responsibility to find out whose homeland you live in. So when I talked about the 8 different tribes, the 8 different languages, the 8 different places, this kind of breaks up the whole area. So you see, my family is from Karkin, and that's a very special place up in Vallejo area now. We lived on both sides of the Carquinez Strait. We spoke a different language than the Chochenyo people, which I'm also from. The Chochenyo folks come all the way down to about mid-San Jose, and then Tamian, and then Lutsen, and Rumsen, Shalom, Awas, and Tush. All of those are Ohlone people. We all had similar dances, we had similar ways that we spoke, but our languages were different as French and Italian, right? So we had all of these different things. This is just a really small area of California. California at one time made up of over 200 different tribes. and only 51 of those tribes are in existence today, according to the federal government. Many of us are living under this whole idea that we don't exist, that we're fighting for this way of talking about our ancestral roots, that we still have this connection to our land, that we have these ways that we are supposed to be. And so when we started doing the shell mound walks in 2005, we did those for 4 years. We walked those shell mounds, we prayed for our ancestors, and we brought people along from all over, all walks of life. And then we started working with this gentleman named Wounded Knee de Ocampo. And Wounded Knee de Ocampo was a Miwok man who had grown up in Vallejo, California his entire life. And when Wounded Knee de Ocampo was working on some issues there with a group called Spirit, he came across this park that the Vallejo district wanted to destroy. And it's called Sogorea. And in 2011, we started doing in 2005 we started working with him, and he started actually doing the work around protecting and preserving that land. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on about what that whole process was about occupying that land. This is a great picture. Every year and the day after Thanksgiving, the biggest shopping day of the year, we go to this place called Emeryville Bay Street Mall. Emeryville Bay Street Mall is one of the biggest shell mounds of the Bay Area. It was over 3 stories high and 350 feet in diameter. And today it has a little tiny mound in front of it. It has shopping all over the place, and it virtually doesn't say anything about the existence of Ohlone people today. And so we show up there every year, and we give information out to people, and we have ceremony there, and we invite the public. And I think in the last couple of years, we've had about 300 people show up in support of doing this work around the Bay Area. So I'm going to turn this over to Ariel. Ariel's going to go ahead and do a piece. I'm really blessed to have been working with Ariel for the last couple of years, or longer than that. It's been about 10 or 15 years that me and Ariel have been working. I've actually kind of seen this guy grow up and seen his kids being born, and have had the pleasure of seeing the work grow into something that's amazing, that talks about the difficulty of growing up and living in areas that Ohlone people live, but also how is it that you come to grips with doing the work inside the Bay Area and knowing whose land you're on. So here you go, Ariel.
Thank you, Corrina. Thank you very much. So you might be wondering, like, what's this white dude got to say about living on Ohlone land, right? Like, whatever. And right? And I ask myself that question sometimes too. But you know what's interesting? Like I mentioned before, I was born and raised in Oakland. And I went to Oakland public schools, and I went through lots of history classes. And I didn't learn the word Ohlone until I was about 25, 26 years old. And that's because I went to find out. So what I like to do is tell you an abbreviation of my journey, right? Living in the Bay Area, as a white kid in a very multicultural context, trying to, have fun, figure things out, find my way through the world. And when I was, in my late teens, early 20s, I started asking some big questions. Some of the big questions, right? What is life about? What is my life about? What does it all mean? Who am I really, right? Some soul-searching kind of questions. And it occurred to me that one of the places I might be able to find some insight into these questions was to talk to my grandfather. So my mother's father, my last living grandparent. I figured, well, maybe if I can learn something about his life and where, my family comes from, I might get a little insight into who I am and what my life is all about. So I went to interview my grandfather. Now, my grandfather grew up on a ranch in Wyoming in the 1920s. This was like cowboy country. No running water, no electricity. His father had a big ranch with horses and cows, right? He escaped a 12-foot rattlesnake. Growing up, I had heard stories, right, about his adventures on the ranch. But now I was asking from a young adult perspective, and I'm kind of digging around, asking him certain questions, interviewing him, and I say, hey, grandfather, how did we get that land that the ranch was on? And he says, it was a homestead. And I say, I went to public school, Grandpa, you got to help me out with that. What is the homestead? And he explains that the United States had this act, this law, called the Homestead Act of 1862, and that the federal government was giving land to people for free. Free land. Can you imagine? And I said, oh, wow, that's crazy. Who lived on that land before our family? And my grandfather said, being the 76-year-old Midwestern Republican that he was, he says that land was empty. Right? Now, I knew the land was not empty, but I didn't know who lived there or what had happened to them. And so I started doing all kinds of research. It kind of lit a fire. I had to figure it out. I had to figure this out. So, of course, Wyoming is not empty. It was the middle of northern Cheyenne, Lakota, Arapaho territory, right? Hundreds of years, thousands of years of history of people living there. And in fact, that area was right in the middle of what's called the Indian Wars, right? You ever heard of Custer's Last Stand? It was like around the corner. And as I was doing the research, and I found out where the ranch was specifically, and then I found out what happened on that land. And it turns out in 1876, there was a major battle between the U.S. Army and the Northern Cheyenne, just after Custer's Last Stand. And the Army attacked the tribe at dawn, killed a bunch of people and ran them off into the winter, snow, right? So not only was that land that my family got for free from the government not empty, but it was a part of some of the most violent and bloody battles of the Western expansion, right? The colonization of the United States. So I'm writing this one-man show. This is from my one-man show, Freeland, and I'm grappling with all this. I'm trying to figure this out. What does this mean for me as a white dude in the 21st century? Like, how do I make sense of all of this? And I realized at some point that I learned a lot about what had happened there in Wyoming. But Wyoming is not my home. And I realized I didn't know anything about the history here. So I'm going to perform an excerpt of the show for you. And it's going to pick up there. How's that sound? Yeah? That sound alright? I almost believe you. You guys want to see some live theater? Yeah! Alright. We'll see if I can get this remote control to work. This way. Right at that. You ready? You see my cue right here? Goes like this. I now know the history of the ranch and that land in Wyoming. But what went down here in Oakland? Who lived on this land? What happened to them? There's all these references to Native Americans. I've lived here my entire life, gone through 16 years of formal education, but still don't know jack about the indigenous people of this land. Like, what's up with Ohlone Park? Or Shell Mountain Street? We've been having technical difficulties all night. This is perfect. So what I would like to do is, I think when I snap before the slide, right? Yeah, snap it up for that. Make it up on the fly. We're gonna figure it out. I need to make sure this is one of those. Thank you for your patience rolling with us. Right there. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to practice. Perfect. All right, we're ready to go. Okay. Yeah, come up, Corrina. Oh, man. I'm putting her to work. She's running the music and the slides. It's a collaboration, man. We all pitch in. I've lived here my entire life. Gone through 16 years of formal education, and still don't know jack about the indigenous people of this land. Like, what's up with Shalmount Street? Or Ohlone Way? There's all these references to Native Americans, but they're so easy to not pay attention to. Just fading into the background. But something changed back there in Wyoming. A door was opened that I can't close. And I can't pretend I don't know what I know. And I need to find out what happened here in my hometown. I walk from my house in Oakland 4 blocks to the border of Emeryville, through the brand new gentrification condominiums, past the train tracks, over to the Bay Street Mall. At the intersection of Shalmount Street and Ohlone Way, I stop and look around. 360 degrees of development, all built in the last 10 years. It all has that new plasticky kind of feel, like it's a Disneyland set or something. 250,000 cars drive by this site on Interstate 80 every single day. I've driven through here thousands of times. But I've never stopped to really look, to really see the land below the city. What's down there? Down there. Jibba jibba down, jibba jibba down, down, jibba down, down, like a DJ scratching archival records. I dig in crates of the past, searching for the perfect beat. Like geologists read rocks to tell time in reverse, this land holds history carved in its flesh. Stories submerged in its structure. Starting at the surface and digging down into the unknown history of my homeland. Digging down, digging down, digging down. Ha! 2016. I stand on this land, this shopping mall owned and operated by Madison Marquette. Easy to forget where I am in the glittering glass of American glut. Shiny and new and on sale, 400 and 1,000 square feet of retail. Banana Republic, Bank of America, Barnes & Noble, Victoria's Secret, Old Navy, H&M, and The Gap. 260 or apartments, 82 townhouses, 16 movie screens, 230 hotel rooms, 2,000 parking spaces. Adjacent IKEA. Thick slab of earth, pavement over earth packed hard and heavy. Dead in the screaming silence of the past. Digging down. 1991. Down beneath sidewalk and streets, mall construction disturbs buried bodies. Ohlone ancestors sleep for thousands of years, wake up to the sound of blaring bulldozers scraping their souls into steel boxes. Some bones so toxic they feel like rubber. So drunk off chemical cocktails they're handled and disposed of as toxic waste. Others buried in unmarked mass graves, hundreds removed from their resting place to create space for the foundation of the new mall. Emeryville City Council calls desecrated cemetery progress, and stonewalls local Ohlone community members who demand respect for the dead. Corporate officials play their game to win. Offer losers a fake 50-foot shell mound filled with whitewashed history, adding insult to injury, saying nothing about Ohlone burials, nothing about the hundreds of bodies already removed nor the thousands that remain, nothing about the vibrant Ohlone community alive today. Digging down. 1981. Amidst rusty industry and economic decline, this land assigned federal designation in the brownfield. Soil fully saturated with hydrogen sulfide, arsenic, lead, DDT residuals, and petroleum hydrocarbons. The ground bubbles with acid as volatile heavy metals seep into buried bones, bleed into Temescal Creek, run red into the bay. Muddy water poisoned before I was born. Digging down. 1924. This land is sold to Sherwin-Williams Paint Company. Their Cover the Earth logo depicts a paint bucket pouring blood red paint over blue-green glow, suffocating the planet as businessmen drive steam shovels, clawing and ripping the largest shell mound down to ground level. UC Berkeley archaeologist notes 692 bodies found and haphazardly destroyed. Arrowheads, knives, spearheads, mortars, pestles, ceremonial pipes, all devoured by hungry metal mouths, crunching through hundreds of years of history. Shell mound material, calcium rich from shells and bones, used to pave Oakland, Berkeley streets, College Avenue, Dwight Way, Interstate 80. White people paved their modern roads with bones of the Ohlone ancestors, paving the roads with bones, walking on a people's history without regard, digging down. 1876. An entrepreneur establishes an amusement park, Shell Mound Park, with horse track, carousel, train station, bowling alley, shooting range, restaurants, bars, and a dance pavilion placed directly on top of the shell mound. Wealthy white people from San Francisco flock to dance Irish jigs, fast waltzes, and all sorts of dances on the graves of Ohlone men, women, and children. Literally dancing on their graves, drunk and dancing until prohibition slows the stream of amusement seekers to a lonely trickle. A lonely land littered with broken beer bottles and empty bullet shells. Digging down. 1849. The story expands. Shell Mound land, part of territory colonized into California. Golden State fiending, gold rushing to mine rivers bleeding gold. Immigrant greed speeds northern genocide. Disease and murder explode like gunpowder as state leaders pay white militias $1 million to hunt for native scalps. $5 a head, while thousands of children are kidnapped and sold into legalized slavery, and the shell mounds scream in silence. Digging down. The land passes hands. From U.S. to Mexico. From Mexico to Spain. Digging down. 1769. Father Junipero Serra stabs the earth with Spanish flagpole. European invaders establish mission system slavery for Ohlone manual labor. Kidnap and convert children to save their souls from a Christian devil. Ohlone backs broken like Bibles. Bones. Water squeezed like bones. Survival while death rains down. Down, 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 down in this hole. I've been digging for so long, I'm tired and cold. My hands ache with the pressure. My hands are blistered and bloody. It's so hard to open my eyes. The truth is so ugly. So many layers of pain, my heart's numb. Stunned by the reality of what we've become. Our humanity lost in this culture of violence. While the status quo is entrenched in sickening silence, this is my home. But nobody told me about the history of genocide against the Ohlone, about the toxic waste sites or the dead ecosystem. I was searching for my roots because my ignorance was prison, but this knowledge is so hard to bear. To learn my world's built on suffering, and nobody cares, and what can I do? I'm just one person, and I'm not sure that I have the strength to deal with this hurt, and my heart is breaking. To see my home stripped naked, they destroyed and violated everything I hold sacred. And my life is implicated. Who am I to live here? Just another white man who profits from oppression severe? I don't know what to do. It's such a deep contradiction, and I can feel the path beneath me heating up with the friction. But I can't ignore the voices that's been calling. The choices that I'm making and the work I got involved in. Crawling on my hands and knees, digging in the dirt. Desperate for a way to heal this legacy's hurt. This history's so heavy. Like bones of lead, my heart is broken open. That's why this poem's read. Look, here I am on this land. I'm just a man, but my hand has been dug here. I find home where I live. I find love here. Yet this earth is stained. Gravestones and concrete. Is it worth the pain? I dig back in time and search for names, but I can't reverse the games of my family, the hurts and the blames. The curse and the shame, I thirst for change. From the plains to the old coastal range, from COINTELPRO to AIM. Cowboys and Indians, war games, it's more of the same. The horror remains. From Wyoming to West Oakland to Iraq, souls start to bang. You can't be neutral on a moving train. Nothing but full accountability, and justice will soothe the pain. My life's blood, bone, flesh, won the West. Colonial conquest, destiny manifest. U.S. Army pressed and not in war. How many innocent people murdered and unaccounted for? How many known dead? So my family could homestead. My history is bleeding. That's why this poem's read. Are you prepared for the changes of character? Do you claim area, Native America? My life in white skin, privilege. My great-granddaddy's prophet was wrong, and mine still is my village. Built on haunted ground where they killed kids, raped the women, burned the buildings, and pillaged how many known dead. So my family could homestead. My history is burning. That's why this poem's read. Down, 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 digging down. Down, down, deeper into the dark. When the Christian calendar does not mark the year. When seasons cycle with acorn harvest and animal migration. The time when birds darken the sky with their wings. Grizzly bears and antelope roam through rolling hills and redwoods. Sea otters swim in the crystal blue bay, encircled by the shellmouse. For thousands of years, the Ohlone have lived here. Where the complex ecology of land and water brings an abundance of food. Shellfish, a central staple for the Ohlone. Mussels, clams, oysters, crabs, gooseneck barnacles, abalone, gathered in wicker baskets, cleaned and cooked and eaten, shells discarded on the ground, over time accumulated into mounds. Hundreds of years of shells, layers of life and death. The Ohlone buried their dead here, bodies covered in red ochre, buried with precious possessions, abalone ornaments, elk bone whistles, bundles of raptor talons, buried in fetal position next to their families. Shell mound cemeteries, sacred sites. This shell mound was the biggest around the bay. Over 65 feet tall, 360 feet diameter. Bigger than a city block. Built by generations of shells, bones, and rock. Plants packed together like puzzle pieces. While the people collect acorns in the autumn. Hunt deer in the spring. Weave baskets of willow and fern root. Sweat ceremonies in temescals. Sing to the spirits of the trees. Family clans and community councils weave the web of relation. A civilization too subtle for European eyes. They were called dirty, savage, diggers who don't know God. But here, at the bottom of this hole, I think I can finally see how the layers of dirt in our eyes blind us, how the genocide becomes normalized, and the people become lost. But if you listen close, you can hear it in the wind, the whispers of spirit, the echoes from the dead. Only fragments of Ohlone culture have survived the genocide. From the screaming silence comes a song. All that is known, this single line. Dancing on the brink of the world. Thank you. We made it. We made it through. So what I'd like you to do now is, after watching that piece, to turn to someone next to you. Maybe there's someone you came with. I challenge you to meet someone new. Introduce yourself, and take a few minutes just to conversate and process and reflect your basic questions. Which, of course, there's not a single aspect of our presentation tonight that is not going to be technically challenged, at least in some small way. But spirit prevails, right? So we're good. That says, how are you feeling? Right? And what are you thinking? So it's really simple. You have a couple minutes to share with a partner. After seeing that performance, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? Did any part stand out? And if you have any questions. I'll let you know when your time is about halfway done. You'll have maybe 4 minutes total for both people to talk, so make sure you share the space equitably. Introduce yourself. Go for it. Great, welcome back. So we're hoping to have some time at the very end for a Q&A and some conversation. But we're just going to take like a couple minutes right now to open up a conversation as a full group. if someone has something burning to share about anything you've seen up to this point, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, thoughts, comments, we'll take a few now. Don't all rush, it's okay. Yes, please.
I found your indictment of white people very shocking. And one of the questions that arose, I don't know, maybe indictment is a strong word, but one of the questions that arose in my head as you were saying these things was, how responsible do you think that like modern white people are for the actions of their ancestors? Like that was kind of like a question that I had throughout your performance. Obviously, you think that there's a lot of responsibility. I would guess that from your performance, but I want to know like your take on that.
Thank you for sharing. That's a pretty deep question, right? How responsible are white people today for the actions of their ancestors? And you could talk about that in the context of slavery, right? Various wars around the world, or the colonization of Ohlone people in the land right here. Yeah, thank you for sharing that question. Other thoughts, comments, feelings, questions?
I thought it was a super powerful performance and super educational for me as well. I'm really curious as to how the two of you met initially.
Do you remember? I think I reached out to Corrina.
Yeah, I think so.
So I wrote this all in 2006, 7, 8, and I was doing research for this piece. It's research heavy, right? It's a history, and it was really important for me to find and talk to Ohlone folks. So I reached out to Corrina. I also reached out to a woman named Anne-Marie Sayers, who was Ohlone from South Bay. And actually I don't know if you remember that moment where I'm down here, then the music cut out, and I had to walk over and start the music over, but then there was this rattle sound. So that was Anne-Marie Sayers playing a deer hoof rattle, right? So she contributed to the soundtrack in that way. And in both situations, I came asking questions to gather information, but I also performed some work in progress excerpts and said, is this okay? Is this accurate? Is this helpful? Trying to be respectful because it's not my story to tell. Trying to be conscientious. And yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think we've been working together ever since that happened. And actually, I don't remember seeing. I usually have over. No, it's not. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, first of all, I want to just say that the ancestors are playing tricks on us today, right? And so I just want to recognize those guys and thank you so much for your humor. I think that, the thing is that I didn't actually see Ariel's full performance for a while. And then I went and seen it at Laney College at the theater there and with my daughter. And I think the first time that I actually saw it, I cried because he got it, right? He understood what had been going on this land with our ancestors for all of this time. And so for me, I'm deeply grateful that Ariel could go to different places and tell our story in that kind of a way.
Yeah, and Corrina and I have been working together, I guess, for 12 years or something. Producing various events around the Bay Area, talking and speaking and organizing. I will tell you a little bit more about our organizing work later. I guess we'll have time for maybe one more quick comment or question, and then we'll come back at the end for some Q&A. Any other burning contribution? I see it. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm from Chicago, which we were all told as kids, this used to be Native American land, and then it became a trading post, and then became a city. But we were told absolutely nothing else about the history of the city, like the land that we lived on, like similar use. And now I'm like, oh, I should go learn about that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. I agree. The crazy thing is, I've traveled around with this show all over the country and performed, and for some reason, our society, our education system has decided that it is not important for people to know the story of the land where they live. That is irrelevant, let alone the people who have always lived there and what's up with them, right? This is not an accident, but it's consistent. So, you're from Chicago, you go anywhere. Every once in a while you'll have one of those like amazing history teachers that like really break it down. But they are few and far between, and they're, coincidental to a certain degree. In the system of education itself, it's marginalized and not valued. So that experience is widespread. And the other heartbreaking side of that story is everywhere you go. This is the story of what happened here in the Bay Area. But everywhere on this continent, there are similar parallel stories of colonization, of murder, of genocide, of theft. And that's hard. It's hard to look at. It's hard to swallow. It raises big questions like the one you proposed, right? About our society and our purpose and our relationships. But I'd rather know the truth, right? Than live in ignorance or be sold a lie. And, when I found out all this as an adult, I actually got pretty pissed. I was like, why didn't nobody tell me this information? You've been telling me, about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and all kinds of other stuff. Tooth Fairy. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Right? That's that.
Thank you all. I'm going to actually tell you a story about a place that called Sogorea. And Sogorea is this working? You guys hear me? Okay. Sogorea is one of our burial sites and one of our ancestral places. It's actually one of the shell mounds. It's actually got 2 shell mounds on it. It's the last 15 acres of open space on the Karkin Strait. And it's a very special place because it was the last stronghold for Ohlone people, Karkin Ohlone people, until about 1810. And my ancestors were taken off of that land and pulled into missions San Jose and Fremont. Both my ancestors were enslaved in Mission Dolores here in San Francisco and Mission San Jose and Fremont. And the way that we're able to trace that is because the Catholic missions actually took really, really good notes about where they pulled people from, the village sites, who they married, when they died, how they got baptized, all of those kinds of things. So we could actually trace our ancestral roots all the way back to first contact. But this place called Sogorea is a really special place. I was just there this past weekend. But there's this whole history of the guy Wounded Knee Dale Campo I was talking about, who grew up there in Vallejo. He'd been trying to save this particular place, from the park district, creating it into this massive park, right? With all kinds of amenities and bathrooms and lighting and all this other stuff. And this place has been used for many, many years by fishermen, by people walking their dogs, by all kinds of folks, right? And it still is today. But what they were going to do is they were going to actually bulldoze down 2 shell mounds. There's a freshwater creek that runs through there. And for years, we had been going to environmental impact report meetings, we've been going to city council meetings, we've been going to park district meetings, and we've been asking people not to desecrate this particular area and to just leave it as it is, right? Of the 425 shell mounds that ring the entire Bay Area, this and one in San Bruno are virtually the only ones that don't have pavement on top of them. So we asked them to leave it as it was. We had people from all over the world that wrote letters asking them to leave this intact. And we had people that actually had their townhouses butted right up against the property that wanted to see the water. So wanted trees to be pulled down, wanted the hill to be graded where my ancestors' cremations were. So all of that was happening for many years. And then in 2011, the city of Vallejo was actually broke, and they were filing bankruptcy. So the whole city was broke, filing bankruptcy. But what they decided to do, their park district was actually separate from them. They decided to give their park district $40,000 in permitting fees for free to start the destruction of our ancestral home. And so when that happened, we actually put a call out, and we asked folks to come and stand with us. So on April 14th of 2011, we gathered people together. And there was probably about 50, 60 people the first day that we were there. And our friend, Fred Short, who is the spiritual leader for the for the Northern California American Indian movement, lit a sacred fire. And that sacred fire stayed lit for 109 days while people from all walks of life came and protected that land. We stayed there and we created a community that is very different from the communities we live in today. Today I go home and I can shut my door and never talk to my neighbors or know their names or find out anything about where they live. But in those 109 days when we stayed together, a community was built where people lived together, they prayed together, they ate together, and they did all of these things together and protected this sacred place. And it didn't matter who you were, what your background was, what your religion was. When you came through those gates, you put tobacco in that fire, you prayed in every way that you wanted to or didn't want to, just out of respect, and you became a part of that community. Folks that couldn't come sent wood. They paid for the porta potties. They sent tents out. They came during the weekends when we had celebrations. Medicine people came from all different walks of life and prayed there with us. And none of us were ever arrested. Now that doesn't mean the Department of Justice, Homeland Security wasn't there with us, or didn't come and try to meet with us. And it doesn't mean that the city didn't try to get us to put that fire out many times. They asked us to take our sacred fire outside the gates every night and then bring it back inside. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. If you belong to a church, or even a Catholic church, which I grew up in, I was like, would you ask the Catholic Church at the end of the day to move the altar over? And then when they opened up in the morning, move it back? It's the same thing. So we went through a whole bunch of different processes there. And actually in day 99, a federally recognized tribe, some of you guys might know Yochitehi or Cache Creek Casino, they came in and they actually bought into cultural easement. And this was the very first cultural easement created between a park district, a city, and a federally recognized tribe. They paid $30,000 so that they could be part owner in these 15 acres of land, which will not ever be developed, right? It would take it would take all three of them to agree that anything would happen. And since the tribe says nothing will happen, then nothing will ever happen on that land. So that land is protected from development. But did it mean that they didn't go in and destroy stuff? No. They allowed the grading to happen. They took down many of the environmental trees and stuff that was there that we asked them not to touch. They actually took down a house that was on top of a shell mound that actually hurt the shell mound that was still there. So even though it was a federally recognized tribe that stepped in, they allowed some of the desecration to continue to happen. So it was really difficult to see those things going on there. They also signed an agreement saying that no more than 10 Indians would ever be on that land again together. And that they would never take a big drum there, because the neighbors were pissed off that we had a drum there all the time. And we thought, that was great. You signed the agreement, we didn't. So every year, we go back. With not more than 10 Indians. And anytime somebody wants to bring a big drum, we encourage them to do that. Because for us, that is our sacred place. For us, we have that connection to the land. For us, that is the place where we are supposed to do the ceremonies that we are originally supposed to do. This past weekend, we had a beautiful ceremony out there with the Winnemem Wintu. The Winnemem Wintu are people that speak for the salmon, and they live way up in Shasta, way up north. And they're now federally recognized as well. But we had the ceremony for the salmon, because on our land there, the salmon come through there, and they go through the delta, and they do this wonderful, beautiful thing, because they're a magic fish. They go from being saltwater fish to freshwater fish, so they can go home, and they can spawn. And when those babies come back down, they do the same thing in reverse. They come down, and they go from freshwater fish to saltwater fish and out to the oceans, right? And so because of our creation stories, they tell us that we have this beautiful tie together and that we pray for them. And all along, our original teachings tell us people along the rivers sang to those salmon to come home. And it's not just for us, it's for everybody. Those salmon actually clear out the waterways. They actually bring more oxygen into the water. That water actually comes down and serves us in the cities. It's our responsibility as Native people to do that, but it's also our responsibility as human beings to begin to look at this world in a different way. That we cannot continue to think of it as just resources to be thrown aside. That we have to figure out how do we live in a different way. And I think that that's what Sogorea actually taught folks. People of all walks of life came in there and they figured out what their niche was. We had one guy and all he did was take care of the compost. We had one guy who, because they shut off the water after we were there for a week, went and he hauled water for us every morning before he went to work. We had a guy that took out the recycling for us. We had folks that just chopped the wood. We had people that just came and taught people how to sing songs. Everyone was responsible for something. And it was a beautiful way to live the community. After we were there for 109 days, it was difficult to go back to the way that people live today. It took many of us many months before we could actually watch TV or read a book and to actually engage in the way that society asks us to engage now, where we don't know one another. We're not responsible for one another. We don't take care of each other in the ways that we're supposed to do. And so Sogorea is this beautiful place that I encourage you guys to all come to come and just sit, to come and just be a human being again. And then pretty soon I'll talk to you guys about what I'm doing next with the Sogorea stuff. I'm going to give this back over to my buddy.
So, while all that was happening with Sogorea, I have finished Freeland as a play, and I started working on another play called Amnesia. And this was a story about my family roots. You know, I was still asking some of those big questions that I referred to earlier, still kind of trying to figure it out. And so I started finding the story of my great-great-grandparents. Yeah. And I found this picture. This is my great-great-grandparents, Hyman Kavelovich and Esther Shifra. This picture was taken in 1893, maybe 94, in New York City. Now, like many white American people, my family didn't know much of our family history. Certainly, like, not once it was in Europe, right? Like, it might have gone back a couple generations. You know, talk about grandfather's ranch, maybe great-grandfather something. But I didn't know where, like, we came from. And I knew that I didn't come from Oakland and had been traveling around the country and learning about Native indigenous stories. And I started raising this question of, like, well, where am I indigenous to? And I wanted to find out. So I started doing a bunch of genealogical research, tracing family stories, calling crazy old uncles, and, you know, just like gathering as much information as I could. And I found the village where my great-great-grandfather, Hyman Kavelovich, grew up. It's a little town called Lubcha. Back then it was part of the Russian Empire, right? This is the 1870s, 80s, and 90s. Now it's in a country called Belarus. Anybody heard of Belarus? Yeah. They still got a dictator. It's not tight. Because it's really hard to get there. But I found it. Nobody in my family had known where, like, you know, any village site, any ancestral origin. I found Lubcha. And because I was writing a new play and I got some grant money, and I told my brother, I said, let's go. Let's go. Let's figure it out. Go to the next one. So we went in May 2013, a couple years ago. My brother and I went to Belarus, which is like, I hadn't even known that it was a country before then, right? Like, what do you know about Russia? I'm like a child of the Cold War, right? I don't know anything about Russia. But we go to Belarus. This is the town. That says Lubcha. That's the sign. It says Lubcha. Go to the next one. And we got to spend a couple of days walking around. Go to the next one. This is the building that was a synagogue before World War II. So Lubcha, like many towns in Eastern Europe, had a majority of Jewish people for hundreds of years. My family, the Kaveleviches, had lived there for hundreds of years, generations going back and back and back. And then the Holocaust happened. And almost all of them were murdered. The vast, vast majority, right? You probably know that story. A side note, has anybody ever heard of the Bielski brothers? Yeah, a couple people? Or seen that movie? You remember what's the name? Defiance? Yeah, if you ever have a chance to see it, major Hollywood movie about these Jewish armed militants who lived in the forest outside of Lubcha and fought and kicked Nazi ass. It's pretty cool. So one of my relatives was a part of that whole story, and revolutionary fighter and survivor. But most of the Jews in this town were murdered. So this was the picture I took of the synagogue. You keep going. And that's my brother and I in this town of Lubcha. And one of the things I really wanted to go see was the cemetery, right? Jews have a separate cemetery. Things were pretty segregated back then, right? There's the Jewish part of town and the Christian part of town. There's a Jewish cemetery and the Christian cemetery. And I thought, well, this is a place where maybe I can find some graves. Maybe there's names and dates and information. I can go and I know, my ancestors are buried here. And I wasn't raised super religiously. And so I had never learned the mourner's Kaddish. Y'all know what the mourner's Kaddish is? The Jewish prayer for the dead, right? Incredibly important prayer said in almost every ceremony, always. And it's all about honoring our ancestors. So I had studied the Hebrew and I had learned the mourner's Kaddish so that I could say it when I got to the cemetery in Lubcha, where I know my ancestors were buried for years, right? Generations and generations. Traveled halfway around the world to find this sacred site. And I'm going to play, we'll see about the technicals, but I'm going to attempt to play a video of what I found there. If I can get online. Okay, this is just going to take 1 second. We've been having so much fun navigating. You get to read all my email, what I did today. I'm going to find. Talk to my family members. All of it my business. And then we'll find the video. And God willing. This is what I found when I got to the cemetery. So, what do you know? Here I was in Oakland, doing all this work with Corrina to try to protect and save her ancestral burial sites, right? And I was doing it because it was the right thing to do. But it's different when it's your people, right? It's your family. So, my brother and I were heartbroken. You know, the ancestors are still there, right? We had a powerful experience, and I prayed with them. But yet, there's an electrical transfer box sitting on the cemetery. You know, people have built houses on the cemetery. So I guess one of the questions that I want to pose for us all is, what role does memory play in survival and freedom? What role does, this flip side of that, right, is what role does erasure play in genocide and oppression? What does it mean for a place to be sacred? And to who? Who gets to decide? Fortunately, my brother and I organized, and we had some help from this amazing Belarusian woman who was local. And so we started talking to our family members and our relatives, because as soon as we saw this, we were like, we want to protect this space, just so there can be quiet, right? I mean, that noise was happening the entire time we were there. And we didn't have any power to do anything about it. So I started reaching out to all of our relatives on all the family trees, cousins and aunts and uncles and everybody, and started trying to get some funds. I started working with the lady in Belarus to talk to the city and see what we could do. And at first the city was like, no thank you, go away. And that happened for like a year and a half. It was just like, nope, it's not going to happen. And then I don't actually know what shifted in the like micro-politics of this little tiny town in the middle of nowhere, Belarus. But something opened up. And the mayor was like, okay, if they pay for it and if they make it happen, we'll do it. So we started drafting plans to try to protect the space. And then exactly a year ago, it was actually the first day of Rosh Hashanah last year, right? Which is sweet. I got these pictures. This is a fence with a gate in Hebrew. It says Lubsha Jewish Cemetery. This translates to House of Eternity in Hebrew. It's now the only visible presence of Jews in this town, right? A town where generations of my family had lived and are still buried. And so this is a small thing in some ways, right? In the face of all of history and all of everything, this is just a small little box. It's not even close to the entire space that the historic cemetery is. Some of that is under those buildings, right? But we did what we could to reclaim some land. To say, we were here, and we still are here. And now, when I organize with my sister Corrina, I have a different relationship to it. Right? I'm not just like, I want to help. Do something good, which isn't bad necessarily. But it's deeper for me now. Because I recognize that what's happened to the Ohlone has happened to all of us. Right? We're caught in these cycles of violence. And if you look back on all of your family tree lines, you will find stories of people being oppressed and people oppressing. Right? Most of us if not all of us, have all of that in our family history. So then it becomes a question of what do we do now? What do we do with this information? What responsibility does the children have for the actions of the ancestors? What does healing look like in Belarus and right here in the Bay Area? So I'm really excited because Corrina has this amazing vision for this project here in the Bay Area that she's going to tell you about in 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
So in 30 seconds or less. After we did the occupation, the prayerful vigil of Sogorea, which there's a video on YouTube you guys can watch. It's called the prayerful vigil to protect Glen Cove. If you want to watch it, a friend of ours put that together. But we tried to figure out what it was that we were missing. We've been doing this work around preservation and protection of sacred sites for many years before we actually did the occupation of our sacred place. And still it wasn't done quite the way we wanted to. But we did know was that while we were there, people that came from all over the place and stayed there reconnected to the land and to being human again. And when we looked around where we live, in Oakland, Berkeley, all this Ohlone territory, there are very few places where people can be. People of color specifically, because we don't really own anything in the Western sense, right? We try to figure out how we do that. And for some real weird reason, my ancestors put me in this meeting a couple of weeks after Sogorea finished up down in Southern California with these native land trusts. And there's only a handful of native land trusts in the entire country. But I was sitting there amongst them. And what it was it actually showed me that if we had this tool when we were occupying our own territory, that we could have actually bought into that cultural easement ourselves. That we could have actually had equal access to that land. We could have actually been those folks that did that. And so what does it look like today? Today that we're creating a land trust in the Bay Area. It's an urban women's-led land trust. And it's really interesting when we did the work around looking at land trust. Land trust in the native sense is really about bringing people in. When you look at land trusts all across the country, it's really about keeping people out. It's a no trespassing fence that's usually put up. But with native land trusts, it's really about bringing people in, and it doesn't matter who they are. It's about trying to figure out how do we regenerate ourselves as human beings. And so we have this concept of trying to figure out how do we get these little parcels of land that folks can reconnect to all over the city. How do we do that so that we're not gentrified out? So that we can actually learn how to be with each other again. How do we do that? I look at a really, really poor part of Oakland, right at the edge of Oakland where San Leandro is, and the very below the railroad tracks, and a place that's closed off on either side by railroad tracks if they wanted to close us in. And there's not a park there for any of the kids. A mile up the hill is the Oakland Zoo that none of those kids get to. A mile down the street, they opened up a brand new place where kids can go swimming and stuff, and almost none of those kids that live in that neighborhood go to that place because they have to cross a huge street. So how do we begin to think about creating these places and spaces where people in different parts can actually reconnect with each other again? How do we begin to think about stuff about how do we begin to take care of each other? How do we grow sustainable foods? How do we make sure that those things are in place everywhere that we live? And so that's what Sogorea Land Trust is. But it's also about bringing the 15,000 ancestral remains that are at UC Berkeley, and the 15,000 ancestral remains that are in San Francisco State, and all of the other ones that are all over the place back home again. Because we're not a federally recognized tribe, we don't have a land base to bring them home to. We created this land trust so that we can get land back, so that we could rebury our ancestors and create a healing for the entire Bay Area. That's what has to happen. In all of Ohlone territory, from Vallejo down to Carmel and out to Highway 5, none of us have what we call a roundhouse. Those are our spiritual places. Our places where we're supposed to dance and sing and renew the earth. A part of our original teachings tell us these things. And none of those places exist. Sogorea Land Trust will allow us to have that land to do that. That's why we've created this. We've created this for the next 7 generations. So I invite you guys to look at the Sogorea Land Trust. I had great help with Ariel, and folks that are accomplices and allies in putting this together. I'm really talking about some really beautiful things and how we can get this and work together as a community that now lives and shares this space that we call the Bay Area.
So I invite you to visit SogoreaLandTrust.org. There's more information, and there are a lot of ways to get involved. Of course, financial contributions, but there's also different campaigns that are happening. We're working right now to protect the West Berkeley Shell Mound, which is down by 4th Street, which is this like fancy shopping center. But they're trying to talk about digging up another shell mound. There's more Ohlone burials that are in the ground, and we're trying to keep them in the ground and protect them and keep the open space. There's ongoing campaigns happening all over the Bay Area, and for me, it just makes sense to support this work, right? It's not just for Corrina and the Ohlone community. It's not just even for all Native people, but it's for all of us. I feel like the history of this land is haunted, and that impacts everybody. And there are ways, like Corrina talks about, to heal, make things right. Putting those stolen bones back in the ground with prayer in a good way would help make everything just a little less stressful and crazy in the bay, right? Maybe when you're driving in traffic, people would just be a little more sure. So I invite you to plug in to the work, to the ongoing work. There is an event that we organize every November. This year is going to be November 19th at La Peña Cultural Center in Berkeley called Things Taken. Come to that. There will be all sorts of events and various things to plug in. And if you feel so inspired, find out about the folks where you come from, both in your family and in the land that you live on, or your parents live on, or etc. Follow. There's lots of tributaries, right, to this body of water.